This video's gonna contain spoilers from the off, so I'm warning you now. Big Mouth has now ended with Season 8 after around 7.5 years, and I've said it before in the previous seasons that I covered, the show definitely lost something over the years that once made it what it was when it first landed on the screen. However, what I will say is that this season brought back what was originally so good about the show, and it concluded it in the most appropriate way possible. Season 8 is the best season that we've had in years. From the musical numbers, to the crude humour, to the small one-liners that made me laugh out loud, to the way that the future became this physical, tangible being where the characters returned to the page. It was just such a beautiful and poetic way for the show to finish. I'm just going to get into this video because I can't wait to talk about the final season. Here is a review of Big Mouth Season 8 and The Ending Explained. The Ending Explained. This whole final season allowed us to see the likes of Nick, Andrew, Jesse and Jay going throughout high school this time, and we even saw Nick hit a growth spurt. So no longer was he the smallest of them all, he actually became the tallest, was on the basketball team and wasn't the nerd that he once was. Something which does sometimes happen at school. The dynamic can literally happen and shift in what feels like overnight. As per usual, we saw the group tackling issues that many people experience when going through puberty, like learning more about the human body, trying to fit into different cliques at school, the whole concept of drifting away from people that you were once so close to and then trying to find a way back, and also distancing yourself from your parents when deep down you don't really want to, but it's just all circumstantial at the time. These are all common things that most of us can probably relate to, and we saw that impacting all of the characters. Even with the likes of puberty stopping for some earlier than others, and others being late, which was a prime example of Andrew and Nick. Honestly, I thought it was absolutely hilarious that Andrew was balding at his age. Hair loss is something that can be so funny because as a guy it's something that you do worry about, and seeing the fear in Andrew's eyes to start with, but then the brotherhood that he was welcomed into, it just had me in pieces. When it came to the final episode, Bridgeton Middle School, which was the school where the entire show started, it was set to be demolished. And as the students went to visit it one last time, there was this large white void that was slowly approaching them. What this was considered to be was the future, and it matched the time that we had left of the final episode. So the future was this tangible, physical thing that the group was set to enter, and they couldn't avoid, despite many people fearing what was on the horizon. What was beautiful about this final episode was that the likes of Nick, Andrew, Jay and Jesse were all reminiscing on their past and revisiting moments over the 8 seasons. It almost symbolized the saying, if these walls could talk, and through these memories they realized that the future wasn't a scary place. It wasn't scary because they'd lived through some terrible, horrifically embarrassing things and they were still in the best position that they could possibly be in the present day, and they wouldn't change a thing. Realizing that allowed Jesse to send the depression kitty and the anxiety mosquito on a break. With Missy, we saw that she came face to face with her younger self and she was so proud of the person that she became. And in seeing that, it made her realize that she should also be proud of how far she'd come since she was in middle school. With Nick, his hormone monster Rick ended up retiring, thank God, and he was given Maurice, but Andrew didn't know about it. However, once Andrew found out, Maurice revealed that he'd be leaving Andrew because Andrew had finished with puberty. They argued at first and there was hostility, but they ultimately made up at the end and ended on good terms, with Andrew doing you-know-what one final time over a tomato. It had to be done, didn't it? As the white void got closer and closer, each of the characters in their small groups walked into the future, a place that was unknown, a place that they were fearful of. But the beautiful thing about it was that even though they didn't know what was on the horizon, the one thing that they did know is that they'd have each other. And that was enough for them all. I feel like the white void almost represented a piece of paper, as when they went through, they almost regressed back to their sketches. Something which I thought was a nice touch because their future is obviously dictated by the writers, the artists, and the animators. So whilst we'll likely never know what their futures entailed, other than what we saw in the previous seasons with the flash forwards, it was a poetic way to leave it, with the characters just simply returning to a blank sheet of paper. Because that paper is untouched, like their futures, until the pen lies upon it once again. I also thought having the cast of human resources there was a nice touch, and it allowed that moment of closure to feel even more final, seeing as though they were just as much involved in Big Mouth as what the human characters were. With Nick and Andrew's final pieces of dialogue being them telling each other that they were going to be best friends forever and ever, it was a line that just hit really hard, and it marked a complete contrast to where this season opened when the both of them were on a rocky patch and Nick called him a bad friend. It just felt like the perfect way for the show to end. My review of the season. Honestly, I thought this was such a strong season of the show. I genuinely think it's one of my favourite seasons. I didn't think Nick Kroll would be able to give the show the send-off that it deserved, because I almost felt like this style of show and the type of humour was a bit outdated, but he proved me wrong. I don't know whether it's because there aren't many shows like this now, where it was ultimately made to feel quite refreshing. The overarching story in this season of having the group in high school, showing progression from that very first season and actually allowing time to pass by in some form was a good way of getting new plotlines in, because it did start to feel a bit stale. Giving Nick that growth spurt was also a nice touch too, because that changed the dynamic of the character completely, and it's something that does often happen at school and the show hadn't touched on it yet. In terms of the musical numbers, I thought there were some great ones in this season. I'd say my favourite ones were the one that Matthew was singing in episode 1 and also the Cycle of Life song in episode 3. Big Mouth has always delivered some humorous but also catchy songs in its seasons, and this one was no different. Breaking the fourth wall is something that the show has done many a time, but I thought with episode 9, opening the episode up to its viewers and getting them to ask questions that they felt hadn't been addressed in the show about puberty was not only a humorous way of educating, but it was really creative in its approach. I thought they handled the questions delicately whilst still being able to make fun of the situation, but it's like they knew they had a duty of care. I'm imagining a large amount of people probably asked for those questions that they selected to be on screen, hence why it got that attention. The song that they concluded with, having the lyrics, "It's all completely normal because we're abnormally the same," was a strong lyric, and I thought it felt like Big Mouth took on some responsibility by trying to make people feel okay. I'd also say that as the credits were rolling of that episode, there was this impending feeling of finality that was on the horizon. With Maurice and Connie saying to stick around, it was then when I was a bit gutted that the show was coming to an end. Before the season aired, I didn't care that much because it hadn't been that good for a few years. But when I was approaching that final episode, this season had just been so strong, and I think there was just that emotional connection of watching every season of the show over the past 8 years and just realizing that it was actually a long time ago. The ending of episode 7 was probably one of my favourite endings to an episode of Big Mouth. Having Devon being hard on herself, but the compassion elephant paying her a visit and telling her to not be hard on herself and to understand how far she'd come and that she was getting through everything was a moment that felt quite emotional to bear witness to. It had such a lovely score underneath it that was really delicate and it just captured the mood perfectly. It feels rare for Big Mouth to give a sweet and serious ending, so it was nice. When it came to the humour in this episode, man, there were just so many funny moments. Whether it be the rag flag that Maurice was waving around at the end and the almost Tasmanian devil attitude that it had was just hilarious. I also thought there were just one-liners that were littered throughout this season that I was just chuckling to myself at time after time. There were a couple of things that I really loved about the animation too in this season. I thought Dredd was absolutely menacing to look at. I loved the glowing red and orange eyes, and it reminded me of the art style of Cuphead, and it felt like a character you could have seen on that. Plus, I also thought the Looney Tunes style that they did in episode 9 made a refreshing change, and it complemented the humour. I would also say that in episode 1, when the Shame Wizard was revealed to be the narrator, I absolutely loved that. It was a great twist and a fresh way of reintroducing a fan favourite character. When it came to the ending, I thought it rounded off perfectly. I thought it was actually quite emotional. We've seen Nick and Andrew over the past 8 years have their ups and downs and navigate through an extremely unique part of life, and both of their stories concluded with them saying that they were going to be friends forever, which I thought was just poetic. If I've got a couple of criticisms of the final season, I wish we got more of Andrew's father. He's a character that never fails to make me laugh, and I feel like we barely got any of him in this season. As well, Lola and Jay breaking up right at the end felt a bit strange, but I kinda get it as it tied into Lola's overarching character of just doing what she wants, and Jay almost being like this lone wolf. So that was a bit of a strange moment, especially so close to the end, because it did disrupt that overarching feeling of closure, but that's genuinely it. Other than that, I loved the season. Big Mouth is a show that I think will be remembered, but sadly, I think it just went on for a bit too long for its own good. Which means that many of the people that started the show probably won't watch how it finished because it just dragged on and gave us seasons that didn't live up to what it once showed us that it could do. So I am intrigued to see what you guys all thought about this ending because I for one loved it. So please let me know in the comments if you did too or if you thought there were flaws. So there you have it. A review of Big Mouth Season 8 and the ending explained. If you want to see me cover every season of Big Mouth, then check the videos below. I've put them there. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.